Have you ever stared into a mirror and felt that tiny, weird jolt of recognition, like your face is both familiar and slightly not you? Now imagine living in a world with no mirrors at all. No bathroom mirror, no selfie camera. No quick check before you step outside. For most of human history, you could go your entire life never seeing your own face clearly. You'd know yourself by feel, by memory, by what other people told you. And then one day, someone discovers a way to make a second you appear on command, not in a painting, not in a shadow, not in rippling water that won't sit still. A real steady reflection. The first mirrors weren't made in workshops with glass and silver. They were found. Picture a calm pool on a windless morning. You lean in, and there you are. But blink, breathe, move, and the image breaks. It's fragile, temporary. Nature showing you a trick and then taking it away. So humans did what we always do when nature teases us with something useful. We tried to steal the trick. The earliest mirror-like objects we know about weren't glass at all. They were stone. Black volcanic glass called Obsidian, polished until it could hold a face. Obsidian isn't just shiny, it's deep. It doesn't reflect you like a bright modern mirror does. It reflects you like a night window, like a dark lake pretending to be solid. In parts of the ancient world, people prized polished obsidian, not just because it was practical, but because it felt like an object with power. If you can capture a face inside stone, what else can you capture? And here's the part people forget. Early mirrors weren't everyday items. They were luxury tools, status symbols, sometimes sacred objects. A mirror wasn't something you casually left on a counter. It was something you owned carefully, like jewelry, like a weapon, like a secret. Then came metal. Copper and bronze could be hammered and polished until they shone, and unlike a pool of water, they didn't ripple. They didn't vanish. They could travel with you. Suddenly, reflection could be carried, stored, and controlled. But metal mirrors came with a catch. They didn't just show you, they judged you. A bronze mirror would warp slightly. It would dim in low light. It would exaggerate a shadow under your eyes. It could turn a perfectly normal face into something tired, haunted, older. Which is funny, because in a way, mirrors have always been honest and dishonest at the same time. They tell the truth in their own language. And people learn to read that language. In places like ancient Egypt, mirrors could be stunning pieces of craft, often round, polished, and mounted with handles. Some were ornate, the kind of object that screams, "This belongs to someone important." But it wasn't only about beauty. A mirror was light. It was the sun, captured and tamed into a handheld circle. When you tilt a polished surface and throw sunlight across a wall, you're basically doing ancient magic. And when something feels like magic, it doesn't stay just a tool for long. In many cultures, reflective surfaces got tangled up with big human questions: identity, vanity, truth, fate, the soul. If a surface can reproduce your face without paint or carving, what is that reproduction? A copy? A shadow? A piece of you? That question has been haunting humans for thousands of years. Because the first time you see yourself clearly, it changes something. You stop being only who you feel like inside. You become an image, a thing that can be looked at, judged, compared, improved, mocked, admired. A mirror doesn't just show a face. It creates a new relationship with the self. And that's why, for a long time, mirrors weren't for everyone. Think about what it meant in a world without photographs. If you were powerful, if you were wealthy, your likeness could be painted, carved, minted on a coin. If you were an ordinary person, you might never get a faithful image of yourself ever. A mirror was one of the only ways to meet your own eyes. Before we go on, if you enjoy these kinds of hidden history stories, you can help us a lot by giving the video a like. Thanks. All right, back to the mirror. Metal mirrors spread, improved, and traveled across civilizations. But no matter how good the polish, metal has limits. It tarnishes, it scratches. It wants constant maintenance. And the reflection, while impressive, was never razor clear. So the dream remained, a true mirror. Bright, clean, almost invisible, except for the face it returns. That dream starts to take shape when glass enters the story. Glass making wasn't new, but using glass to improve a reflection was a clever leap. The basic idea is simple. You need a smooth, transparent surface and a reflective backing. Today we think of that as normal, but imagine how wild it is as an invention. You're creating an object that looks like a window, but instead of showing what's on the other side, it shows you. Early glass mirrors existed in different forms, and Romans, for example, had some reflective glass objects, though the quality varied. But the real turning point comes much later, when Europe begins experimenting with better methods to back glass with metal. And then, in the Renaissance, mirrors become a kind of obsession. Venice, especially Murano, becomes famous for glasswork. Venetian mirrors were so valued, they weren't just household items. They were diplomatic gifts, status statements. Sometimes the most expensive thing in a room. But the process could be dangerous. One method involved a tin and mercury amalgam behind the glass. It worked. It made mirrors brighter and more convincing. It also involved mercury, which is a quiet kind of poison. The kind that doesn't announce itself with drama, but creeps into your body and stays. It's eerie to think that for a period of history, some of the most glamorous objects in wealthy homes were made with materials that could harm the people producing them. A beautiful reflection, bought at an invisible cost. And mirrors didn't just reflect faces. They reflected society. The moment mirrors become more available, the culture around appearance changes. Hairstyles become more elaborate. Fashion becomes more self-aware. People can now rehearse their expressions, practice being charming, practice being intimidating, practice being innocent. A mirror becomes a stage where you can audition as yourself. And here is a strange little twist. Mirrors help shape the modern idea of the individual. Not just a person in a community, not just a role, but a distinct self with a distinct face that can be studied, controlled, presented. It's hard to overstate what a mirror does psychologically. Once you can see your own face anytime you want, you start thinking about how you look when you're not seeing yourself. You start imagining the outside view. You start living slightly in third person. That may sound normal now, but it's a new kind of thinking in the long arc of human history. Even the language around mirrors shows the shift. Mirrors become symbols in stories, truth tellers, portals, traps, tests. They're used to represent vanity, yes, but also self-knowledge. Sometimes they're presented as pure honesty. Sometimes they're presented as deceit, because mirrors are both. A mirror can reveal a smudge on your cheek. It can also convince you that your worth is a smudge that needs scrubbing. And as mirrors got clearer, that tension got sharper. Eventually, a more modern method of mirror making arrives. In the 1800s, chemistry allows for silvering glass in a more controlled way, producing the bright, crisp mirrors we recognize today. Once you can reliably coat glass with a reflective layer, mirrors become cheaper, more common, and more standardized. And that's when the mirror stops being rare. It moves from palaces into parlors, from mansions into apartments, from luxury into expectation. It becomes so normal that we forget how strange it is. We forget that we're walking around with an object that can instantly produce a perfect copy of our face. We also forget how recent the perfect mirror truly is. For thousands of years, humans lived with distorted reflections, dark reflections, wavering reflections, soft-edged reflections. A face seen in water, a face seen in stone, a face seen in bronze. So here's the question that sticks with me. If your first reflection wasn't in a clear mirror, but in a dark piece of polished obsidian, would you think differently about yourself? Would you be less obsessed with tiny details because the image was never that precise? Or would you be more haunted because the reflection looked like a person emerging from darkness? That's the forgotten story of the first mirror. It wasn't just an invention. It was a new kind of experience, a new way to meet yourself. And once humans learned to trap a face inside stone and metal and glass, We never really stopped looking. If you're comfortable, tell me in the comments. Do you remember the first time you truly noticed your own reflection and felt weird about it? And if you want another forgotten origin story like this, I'll see you in the next one.